I wanted to show you part 3 of the videos of making resin earrings. I sorted through a couple more flowers today so that I have lots of flowers to choose from, and I'm going to show you how I mix the resin. And I've realized after doing this craft a couple of times, it's actually easier to pour a little bit of resin, let it harden, and then separately do the designing with the flowers. The very first time I did it, I poured resin, did the flowers at the same time, and it is really messy and really hard to hold the flowers when you get any kind of resin on your hands. So my new process is pour a little bit of resin. This is actually one I did so I can show you. So I poured a little bit of resin and see how it's not all the way full. Then I'll do another pour on top so that it is a complete pour. But for this one, I'm gonna mix it and then pour a portion of it and then let it dry. And while that is drying, I'm actually gonna go outside and water in the yard, and then we'll come back and do the next portion. So this is epoxy resin that I ordered from Amazon. I can share the link in the description. But you do the resin portion first and then the hardener second, and you just stir it for several minutes to try to get some of the bubbles out, and then just let it rest for 5 minutes and then pour. And the trick is you have to do exactly half and half of each of the portions of the resin, or it doesn't set correctly. So this is the tricky part. I'm not actually sure how much I want to pour, so I think I'm going to use this cup today because this is like really big portions. I don't want to pour that much. So I'm going to do an ounce of the resin and then an ounce of the hardener, and it will make 2 full ounces, and that will be enough to do probably 6 or 7 molds of earrings, and then I'll mix it again for the second portion. So here goes the mixing part. So resin first. And you definitely want to wear gloves. This stuff smells terrible and it is sticky, and it's not fun to have it directly on your skin because it takes a really long time to wash it off. Or you can use a nail polish remover and it actually rubs off okay, but then that stinks too. So the best solution is to just wear gloves and try not to get it on you in the first place. So I did 1 ounce of the regular resin, and then I'm going to do another ounce of the hardener. This is usually Connor's job, but he is at Trek. He's being a pioneer today, and he's going to go hike for like 5 miles a day and be a pioneer for a couple of days. I'm excited to hear how that trip goes. Okay, so I have 1 ounce of resin, 1 ounce of hardener, and then you just start mixing. And it makes lots of bubbles. You can see actually the consistency looks more like soap, kind of. It makes it, it's a chemical process. So whatever the chemicals inside are doing to mix together, it changes the consistency completely. So you just mix it, looking at my oven clock to see what time it is. You just mix it for a couple minutes and make sure it is good and together. Do you guys like all the flowers? So I sorted through feverfew, there's poppies, gaillardia, lots of these cute little pansies from around the yard. And my favorites are actually these little guys. They're a weed that I found in someone's yard. I just asked if I could pick them, and they said, yes, you can pick my weeds. So the weeds actually have been one of my favorite flowers to work with because they're itty bitty and they're perfect for the earrings because they're so small. And then these are feverfew leaves, which I also really like. They look kind of like ferns, but most all of these came from our yard except for the weeds, and that's it. The rest all came from our yard. Okay, so you just mix this so that it is nice and clear. There's a ton of bubbles, but most of the bubbles kind of come out as it sits. I actually don't mind the bubbles because it's kind of like nature. There's unique parts to nature, and I think the bubbles look cool. Then it's kind of crystally. But if you don't want bubbles, you have to mix it much more slowly. Mixing it fast is what makes the bubbles. I'm just trying to make sure it's completely mixed. Okay, so then that just sits for 5 minutes. So we're gonna stop the camera for right now. I'll let that timer go and then I'll pour it so you guys can see the pouring process. This is the first time I'm using this little pouring pitcher. It's much easier to pour from this than the cup. I bought this set and it's my first time trying it out. So it's a little bit easier. So I'm gonna pour the resin down for some of it, and then I will put the flowers in after it sets for a little while. Because if you just put the flower directly down before you put resin in, the flower will kind of fall apart and it breaks down and the coloring might not actually stay. The resin helps keep the color. So you want to put a little bit of resin down and then do the flowers. Oh, I didn't get that one cleaned out all the way. Some of these have a little bit of dust. You don't want to have anything inside the molds or it will stay forever. Okay. So 1 ounce of each of them. This is going to be enough. I guessed 5 or 6 of the frames, the molds, I mean. And that's probably pretty close to how much it's going to cover. I'm still learning the guessing process. Let's see, let's do these. Corey's being such a good camera guy. Thanks, babe.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then let's see, how much do I have? Let's do these ones. This has actually been really fun to work on with both Connor and Kelly. They both enjoy creating and mixing the resin and figuring out what to put in. I'll have to show you Kelly's creations. We'll do that on the next portion of the video. I'll hold them out. She was really excited to do show and tell. I'll do these little ones too. But anyway, they have a lot of fun mixing it and then designing it. Connor's made an entire chess board and all the pieces, and Kelly has done a ton of necklaces and just little doodads that can become keychains or whatever. Pendants, I guess is the word I was trying to think of. Okay. Ooh, I definitely could have done a little bit less. I'm still learning. This is only the 4th time I think I've done this. So I'm still learning all the ratios and how much stuff to put in. One thing I can tell you, you have to make sure your surface is completely flat, because if it is bumpy at all, it makes it really hard to have it dry properly, which is why I have a tablecloth down and placemats to try to keep this as flat as possible. Okay, I have enough for some little ones. How about these guys? Okay, let's see. There's enough to kind of scrape out to do a little bit. The silicone mold is really cool because I read lots of reviews before I bought this, but a lot of people suggested you just let it harden and then you can just peel it right out. So it's much easier to clean up, and then you can reuse it over and over and over. So while we're letting this set a little bit before I do the next portion, then it can harden and I can just scrape it out. Okay, so then this will just leave it like that. Oops, not like that, because then it sticks to the cup. Okay, so poured the resin, we're gonna let it set, and then I will not have my gloves on and I can put all the flowers in and do the final pour for the next portion.
You're good.
Okay guys, so I have the resin so it's set. I'm seeing some of the spots where it is pouring kind of funny, so I need to flatten it out some, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put the flowers in. So I'm just double checking it's all okay. I'll put that right there. So then it's just designing. I just pick which flowers I want and set them in very carefully. So I'm just pushing it down inside the resin, and then when I pour the next portion over the top, it will finalize it. This just makes it stay a little bit better, and I can make sure the resin's on the bottom. And the molds are upside down from each other, so I have to turn it around and see that they're the same when I want to make earrings that match. Okay, so that's that one. I have little bubbles, and you can actually pop them with the toothpick if you just poke it a couple times, because you don't want to have bubbles. This is right next to where the hole is for the hardware, so you don't want to have bubbles there. Anywhere else, I don't really mind. But you just push it down a little bit to make sure it's down, and if there's any petals that I want to kind of uncover, this is when I can do that too. Okay, I think I got all of them covered, so I'm going to mix the next portion. Okay, so half and half for each of them, and then stir it to get it nice and mixed. See how it gets a little bit thicker? It mixes and it almost looks like liquid soap. When you pour them in, they're both really, really clear, but when you mix them, they look like soap. And 1234. And then it's nice and clear again. and you just let it sit, so for 5 minutes. So now I'm gonna pour the resin over the top so they can be totally set inside, and I like to use the popsicle stick because I can direct it a little bit better, and then use a toothpick to put it where it needs to go, because I only need a little bit to go over the top. The flowers kind of float around a little bit when they're in the resin, so sometimes I have to keep moving them to keep them where I want them until the resin solidifies hard enough where they won't wiggle anymore. But some of these guys are not in the right spot still. You need to make sure you get just enough resin around where the hole portion is, where the hardware is going to go in. So I'm just making sure there's no bubbles. This one's a little bit lower than the other, so I just want to make sure there's enough. There's a bubble there. I'm just making sure they're completely submerged under the resin. Okay, so that's that section. Then it just dries for about 24 hours and you just pop them out of the molds, and I think I'll show you that. I haven't decided yet. But anyway, that's the resin pouring portion. You just pour a little bit of resin, then pick the flowers that you want to put in, let it set for a little while, and then pour resin over the top. And then this is just poking the little bubbles out and making sure it's nice and clear. And that is the third part of this video series. Thanks for watching. Happy gardening.